8 years ago,
August 6, 1945.
a disastrous occurrence took place in history with around 100,000 plus casualties and major damage to Hiroshima. The United States' bombing of the city led to the termination of Japan's involvement of World War II. The atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima was named Little Boy and was created to bring forth devastating effects that were anything but little.
There are two knowledge claims that were made upon the bombing of Hiroshima, and one of them is the little boy is a new and most cruel bomb, and this was said by Japan's Emperor Hirohito on August 15, 1945. We can correspondence check this because the little boy was the first to be deployed from a United States aircraft, and it resulted in 100,000 casualties with radiation damage afterwards. It is more destructive than normal bombs, but napalm bombs were used on March 9th through 10th on 1945, and it destroyed half of Tokyo and had 150,000 casualties, as well as 285 buildings were destroyed. We can coherence check this by looking at the fact that atomic bombs are powerful even during the bombing and after the bombing. However, bombs cannot be cruel, as Hirohito said, but humans can, and I think he is trying to say that human intentions are cruel and not the actual bomb itself. The second knowledge claim was the bombing of Hiroshima was to bring an end to World War II, and this was said by CSIS on August 10, 2012. We can correspondence check this because the United States' objective was to win the war with the lowest cost as possible, and that means lowest casualties, money, and tools to use. But the lack of incentives to not use the bomb also played a large role in the bombing of Hiroshima. It was seen as the vengeance for Pearl Harbor. And we can coherence check this by looking at the fact that to stop a force, you have to destabilize its powers.
So we had 3 evaluation of sources, and the first one is the first nuclear strikes from a memorandum from General L.R. Groups to the Chief of Staff on August 6, 1945. This source talks about how the generals given the chief, including messages from Captain William S. Parsons about the impact and how many were killed with the first bomb. The second source we have is the second attack on Nagasaki, and this source explains how the president's plan was to attack Karakura, which had a larger army arsenal and ordnance works, but problems made the city bled the city out. General Cruz was then ordered to bomb Nagasaki with the bomb Fat Man. Then the delegation then declared that the bombing of Nagasaki could have been avoided. The third source we have is first Japanese offer intercepted, and that was from the Office of Assistant Chief of Staff on August 10, 1945, which was top secret. This source evaluates how the first Japanese surrender offer was intercepted shortly before Tokyo broadcasted it. This translation of the surrender offer was circulated separately and pointed that the U.S. didn't accept their surrender.
A knowledge issue we have on this topic is knowing that Japan would have surrendered due to such force from the U.S., was it necessary for the United States to drop atomic bombs on Japan, although they were already ready to surrender? Those supporting the decision of dropping the bomb may argue that it is to minimize the number of casualties as well as to stop the war from progressing any longer. And they also said that Japan may have reaped what they sowed in the bombing of Pearl Harbor for killing so many American troops. And those against the decision of dropping the bomb viewed it as an unjust and unnecessary act in the fact that violence is never the answer, and they may believe that the use of atomic bomb was not the only way to cope with the ending of World War II.
We personally thought that the bombing of Hiroshima was an injustice in the sense that it was cruel and unnecessary event because there are many civilians that were killed and injured and homes were destroyed in the bombing. The U.S. decision to drop the bomb was seen as evil. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Revenge, for an example. Pearl Harbor may have been given the U.S. incentives to bomb Japan. However, not only did it kill more innocent lives, it increased hostilities between the two nations. The little to no distinction between civilians and military proves to be a violation of human rights. So Hiroshima brought questions. We came up with, where do we draw the line between right and wrong? And we said that it costs too many innocent lives in gain and loss. And this relates to Hiroshima because is it wrong that the U.S. won the war and stopped even more people from dying? Or is it right that a lot of people died, which would have caused resentment? And the second question is, how does one nationality culture affect his or her bias? And the way people are raised affect their values and bias based on a topic. For example, if one was raised to love his or her country and live for the good of others and everything they lived for was destroyed, they would view the destruction in a negative light, which meant resentment and hostility.
A real-life connection to the bombing of Hiroshima is the bombing of Libyan terrorist groups on April 14, 1986. This was when the United States dropped bombs on the military centers in Libya, and they believed that these military centers were terrorist bases. And this resulted in 100 casualties. The United States said that it was necessary in order to stop terrorism and have revenge on what they did to the American people. But however, is this an act of heroism or revenge? And this is same as Hiroshima because of its incentive to drop a bomb because of Pearl Harbor by bombing Hiroshima. And this is the bibliography. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Yeah.